You know, one of the greatest treasures in old age is peace. Not just silence or solitude, but that deep internal kind of peace that doesn't come from circumstances. It comes from choosing wisely who we allow into our lives. And if there's one type of person that can rob you of that peace faster than anything, it's the chronic complainers. Now you know who I'm talking about. These are the ones who never have a good word to say about anything or anyone. If the sun is shining, it's too hot. If it's raining, it's too wet. If you share something beautiful that happened in your day, they'll find the one flaw in it. And they don't just complain about their lives. They complain about yours too. You'll tell them about a new doctor you're seeing, or a book you're reading, or a trip you've planned. And instead of encouragement, they'll poke holes, subtle comments, little jabs. And before you know it, they've planted doubt where there was once joy. In your younger years, maybe you tolerated it. Maybe you even excused it. Oh, that's just how they are. But hear me when I say this. In your later years, you don't have that kind of time or energy to waste. Not anymore. Your emotional and mental space is too valuable to give away to people who are constantly dragging you into their gloom. Because negativity, when left unchecked, becomes a disease. It spreads. It settles into your bones and spirit. And if you're not careful, their complaints will start to sound like your inner voice. I've seen people, good people, grow old and bitter, not because of their circumstances, but because of who they kept around them. They let others color their view of the world until all they could see was what was wrong. What a tragedy. Life, especially in these years, should be about finding beauty in the small things, holding joy in your hands like a warm cup of tea, not throwing it away because someone said the cup wasn't fancy enough. You might be thinking, but some of these people are family. I've known them all my life. And that's true. But knowing someone a long time doesn't give them a lifelong lease on your peace. You are allowed to shift the closeness of relationships in your life. You can love people and still keep a healthy distance from their attitude. You can show compassion without carrying their complaints like a backpack full of bricks. There's a difference between someone who's going through something and someone who's addicted to complaining. One needs support, the other feeds off drama and misery. And the truth is, some people don't want solutions. They just want to marinate in dissatisfaction. Don't let them pull you into that stew. It starts small, you know? A few conversations here and there. You listen, you nod, you try to be kind. But over time, that energy transfers. You start feeling heavy after talking to them. You start questioning your own optimism, your own gratitude. And eventually your spirit begins to shrink just a little and a little more, until you can't remember the last time you laughed from your gut or felt light in your chest. You don't owe anyone access to your peace. That might sound harsh, but it's truth. You've walked too many miles in life, weathered too many storms to spend your golden years surrounded by clouds that aren't even yours. You need people who bring light, not perfection, not cheerfulness all the time, but perspective. People who can see pain and still speak hope, who can face hardship and still offer love. That's who you need near you. And if you don't have many of those people, it's okay. It's better to sit in a quiet room alone with peace than in a noisy one full of bitterness. Protect your mind, protect your heart. You've earned that right. Let your final seasons be filled with grace, not groaning. Let them talk somewhere else. There's something about getting older that reveals things, not just in ourselves, but in others. You begin to see people more clearly. The masks slip. The true intentions show. And one of the most painful discoveries sometimes is realizing that someone you've loved, trusted, maybe even raised or helped has been manipulating you. It doesn't always come in the form of shouting or obvious control. No, the most dangerous manipulation is subtle. It plays on your kindness. It uses your love as leverage. And worst of all, it can come from the people closest to you, even family. When you're younger, maybe you brush it off. You let it go because it's your child or your sibling or someone you've shared your life with. But in old age, you must be wise enough and strong enough to draw a line. Not from anger, not from bitterness, but from a deep understanding that your time is too precious, your energy too limited, and your well-being too important to keep giving it away to those who twist it for their benefit. It can start with something small, a favor here, a little guilt there. But you've always helped me. I don't know what I'll do without you. You know I wouldn't ask if I wasn't desperate. And because you're loving, because your heart is soft, you say yes. You say yes even when your body says no. You say yes even when your spirit is weary. You say yes because you remember their childhood or the sacrifices you made, or because you don't want them to suffer. But here's what I want to tell you. Manipulation thrives where boundaries are weak. And in these later years, if you don't put boundaries in place, someone else will define your life for you. They'll decide how your time is spent. They'll tell you how to use your money. They'll influence your choices, your health, even your peace, all while claiming to just be helping or just looking out for you. And sometimes it isn't even about what they say, it's how they make you feel. You start noticing that after a phone call or a visit, you're not at ease, you're anxious, tense. You feel like you've done something wrong when all you did was express your own needs. That's manipulation. That's emotional control. And no one, I mean no one, has the right to make you feel guilty for living your own life, especially at a stage where every moment should be rooted in freedom, not fear. Now, this isn't about cutting people off in anger or isolating yourself. This is about recognizing when love is no longer mutual, when it's become a transaction, a power play. You can still love someone and not let them control you. You can pray for someone and still keep your distance. You can care deeply and still say no more. You might hear things like you're changing or you're being selfish when you start to set those boundaries. But what they're really saying is you're no longer easy to manipulate. And that's not a loss. That's growth. That's healing. That's protecting the years you have left so you can live them in dignity and calm. You've carried others long enough. You've given and poured and stretched yourself thin out of love, out of duty. And I know for some of you, it hurts even to think about pulling back. But let me ask you something. If the roles were reversed, would they protect your peace the way you've protected theirs? Would they sacrifice their sleep, their savings, their sanity, the way you have for them? If the answer is no, then it's time to reevaluate the terms of that relationship. This is not cruelty, it's clarity. You are not rejecting them, you are choosing you. And choosing you doesn't mean you stop loving others. It just means you stop letting them rewrite your story. Old age isn't a time to hand over the pen to someone else. It's the time to write the chapter you've earned. One with less stress, more calm, less guilt, more grace, less control from others, and more alignment with your own voice, your own values. You deserve people around you who honor your autonomy, not just your usefulness. People who respect your choices, not just tolerate them. And if someone can't do that, no matter how close they've been, no matter what history you share, then it's okay to create space. You can love from a distance. You can protect your soul and still walk in kindness. You do not exist to be someone else's emotional crutch. Let them learn to stand on their own. There comes a point in life where you begin to value something far more than money, more than possessions, even more than time. And that something is respect. Genuine, soul-deep respect. Not the kind that flatters you in public and dismisses you in private. I'm talking about the kind of respect that listens to your voice, honors your wisdom, and sees your presence as a gift, not a burden. And I'll tell you this plainly, in old age, you cannot afford to keep people around who disrespect you, even if they share your blood. It's a hard truth, but it's a necessary one. Age should come with honor. After all you've lived through, the years you've worked, sacrificed, prayed, held your family together, gave more than you received, the very least you deserve is to be treated with dignity. But not everyone sees it that way. Some people, especially those who've grown used to your strength, begin to overlook your value. They assume that because you're quieter now, maybe slower in body, that you don't matter quite as much anymore. They speak over you, make decisions without you, roll their eyes when you give your opinion. They treat you like a relic of the past instead of a foundation of the present. Let me tell you something. You are not invisible. You are not irrelevant. You are not here to be tolerated. You are here because God still has breath in your lungs, which means you still have purpose. And anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve the front row in your life. You see, disrespect doesn't always come in loud, ugly ways. It comes in being ignored, being talked to like a child, being corrected like you don't know how to think, being reminded of your age like it's something shameful. It comes in little ways, a sarcastic remark here, a dismissive sigh there. You try to share a memory, and they say, "Oh, we've heard that already." You try to give advice, and they laugh and say, "Things are different now." You try to express a concern, and they tell you you're overthinking it. And you sit there, swallowing your words, shrinking inside, trying not to make it worse. That's not love. That's erasure. And sometimes it comes from those you've poured everything into. The very ones who should protect your honor are the ones chipping away at it. And it hurts more because you never expected it from them. But here's the truth. If they will not acknowledge your voice, you must stop handing it to them. If they won't listen to you in love, you must stop chasing their approval in silence. Don't let anyone, not a son, not a daughter, not a sibling, not a spouse, reduce you to someone who has nothing to say. You have decades of experience, of insight, of lessons carved through joy and suffering. Your life is a library, and it deserves to be read with reverence, not skipped over. I want to speak directly to those of you who've been made to feel like your presence is just something people put up with. Maybe they only come around out of obligation. Maybe when they're with you, they're half present, always checking their phone or rushing to leave. Maybe they mock your habits, your routines, the way you pray or the way you think, and you've smiled through it because you don't want to stir conflict. But I'm here to tell you, your peace matters more than their convenience. You don't have to prove yourself anymore. You've already done enough. If someone can't see your worth, stop trying to convince them. Start showing them with how you carry yourself that you won't settle for less. Speak up when it's necessary. Say no when it's needed. And if they call you difficult, let them. If they say you're being sensitive, let them. You're not here to shrink to make others comfortable. You're here to finish strong with your head high and your spirit intact. Surround yourself with those who listen when you speak, who ask for your opinion because they value your insight, not just because they feel obligated. Choose to be around people who light up when you walk in the room, not those who sigh or look past you. You deserve to be seen, fully, deeply, truly seen for who you are, not just who you used to be. You are still wise. You are still needed. You are still powerful. And if someone in your life doesn't treat you that way, it's time they take a step back, because your soul deserves better than disrespect masquerading as familiarity. There's something about growing older that sharpens your awareness, not just of time, but of people. You begin to notice things you used to overlook. The way someone's tone changes when they speak to you. The way your words get brushed aside like they don't carry weight anymore. And perhaps one of the most painful realizations in this stage of life is coming face to face with disrespect, especially when it comes from the very people you helped raise, protect, or walk with for years. You see, age doesn't make you less. It doesn't reduce your value. If anything, it multiplies it. You've walked through things younger folks haven't even imagined yet. You've endured heartbreaks, made sacrifices, experienced miracles, and survived seasons that would have broken others. That's not something to dismiss. That's something to honor. But not everyone sees it that way. Some people, even family, begin to treat your age like a weakness. They don't say it outright, but you feel it. They roll their eyes when you repeat a story. They cut you off mid-sentence because they think they already know what you're going to say. They start making decisions for you, not with you. You sit in the room, and yet your voice goes unheard. And the temptation is to let it go, to chalk it up to the generation gap, or tell yourself not to make a fuss. But let me tell you, disrespect in any form, at any age, should never be accepted. Not because you want to fight, not because you're trying to control anyone, but because your soul was not made to be ignored. You are not an afterthought. You're not a shadow walking around waiting to fade. You are still here for a reason. And that reason includes being heard, being seen, being valued. Sometimes the disrespect doesn't even look like open defiance. It's quieter than that. It comes in jokes made at your expense, in dismissive glances when you try to help, in assumptions that you're out of touch just because you don't do things the way the world does now. And if you're not careful, that kind of treatment will start to sink into your spirit. You'll start believing that maybe your time really has passed, that maybe your thoughts aren't needed anymore. That lie is dangerous. It can shut down a heart long before the body stops working. You know what I've learned? Respect has nothing to do with how loud you are or how much power you hold. It has everything to do with the people you surround yourself with. If you're constantly around people who belittle you, talk over you, or make you feel like a burden, it's not your job to change them. It's your job to guard your space. You've earned the right to choose peace over proximity, even if they're family, even if you've known them your whole life. You can love someone and still say, I will not be treated this way. And I know what some of you are thinking, but they're my child, my brother, my granddaughter. Yes, and you can still set a boundary. You can still say, when you speak to me like that, I feel small, and I won't live the rest of my life feeling small. It's not about cutting people off. It's about lifting yourself up. It's about saying, I've lived too long, given too much, and been too faithful to let anyone reduce me now. Respect is not a luxury. It's not something you should have to earn at this stage in life. It should be the foundation. And if someone can't offer it to you, then you need to start reevaluating how close they're allowed to stand in your life. Because if you keep giving your energy to people who tear you down, you won't have any left for the ones who are willing to lift you up. There are people, yes, even now, who want to hear your stories, who are hungry for your wisdom, who are moved by your grace. But they can't get to you if your space is full of those who only want to silence you. You have the right to sit at a table where your voice matters. You have the right to be in rooms where your presence is honored, not just tolerated. And if no one has told you that lately, hear it from me now. You deserve to be respected every day you're alive by everyone in your life. Never let age convince you to settle for less than dignity. One of the most dangerous traps you can fall into as you get older is keeping people around just because they've always been there. Familiar faces, old connections, long-standing relationships. We tell ourselves that history is enough to keep someone close. But let me tell you something from the bottom of my heart. Not everyone who started with you deserves to finish with you. There are some people, and again, sometimes even family, who simply refuse to grow. You grow, you shift, you open your eyes to new understanding, you embrace change, you seek peace, you let go of old pain. But they stay stuck. They cling to bitterness, they hold on to offense like it's a prize. And they make a home in the past, refusing to step into the present, let alone the future. And when you try to move forward, they don't cheer you on. They pull you back. They make you feel guilty for outgrowing the old dynamics. They accuse you of changing, as if that's something bad. And here's the truth. You have changed. And you should have. Growth is not betrayal. Healing is not abandonment. You were not put on this earth to stay stuck in the same version of yourself just to keep someone else comfortable. Yet there are people who will demand just that. They want you to remain in roles that no longer fit, to keep playing parts in a script you've outgrown, just because it makes them feel secure. These people might not scream or fight. Sometimes they're subtle. They say things like, you're different now, or you used to be more available, more silent, more agreeable, more easy to control. And instead of celebrating the peace you fought to find, they resent it. Why? Because they refuse to confront what they haven't dealt with. And instead of facing their own need to change, they try to make you feel guilty for doing what they won't. Don't let them, please, don't let them. Because the price of holding on to people who refuse to grow is too high. It's your peace, it's your joy, it's your mental clarity. And at this stage in life, you simply can't afford to be tangled up in the emotional mess of people who are committed to staying exactly as they are. You can love them, you can pray for them, but you are not obligated to carry them. See, the weight of a person who refuses to grow is heavier than it looks. They might not always say it outright, but they'll expect you to keep doing things for them, to keep explaining yourself, to keep meeting them where they are, while they make no effort to meet you where you are. And slowly, without realizing it, you start feeling like you're back in a place you've already left behind. Emotionally, mentally. Sometimes growth means distance. It means adjusting the kind of access people have to you, not out of hate, but out of love. Love for yourself, love for your future, and love for what God is still doing in your life. Because yes, He's still doing something. He's not finished with you. And you cannot fully receive what's next if your arms are still tied up holding on to people who are stuck in what was. I've seen too many people grow old and bitter, not because life was unkind, but because they stayed loyal to relationships that were no longer healthy. They confused history with destiny. Just because you've known someone for decades doesn't mean they're meant to walk with you into your final seasons. Some people were only supposed to be part of a chapter, not the whole story. And you don't have to hate them to move on. You don't have to make a dramatic exit or a loud announcement. Sometimes you just quietly step back. You stop explaining yourself. You stop shrinking to keep the peace. You stop waiting for them to change, and you focus on growing anyway. You learn to be okay with being misunderstood, because you know in your heart that you're moving toward peace, not away from love. You are allowed to protect your progress. You are allowed to say, I love you, but I won't stay stuck here with you. You are allowed to walk in freedom, even if it means walking alone for a little while. And let me tell you, on the other side of that hard decision is a deeper kind of peace. The kind that makes you breathe easier, sleep better, smile wider. So don't be afraid to let go of what's holding you back, even if it looks familiar. Because not everyone who's been around you has been good for you. And not everyone who's close deserves to stay close. There's a kind of person that becomes especially dangerous to your spirit as you grow older. Not dangerous in the sense that they yell or fight or stir up chaos. No, these people wear a calm face, sometimes even a polite smile. But deep down, they are fueled by envy. Quiet, corrosive, consistent envy. And I want to tell you today, you must avoid them, especially in your later years. Because envy doesn't always show up with loud complaints or obvious bitterness. Often it hides behind sarcasm, behind backhanded compliments, behind constant comparisons. These are the ones who, when you share good news, change the subject. When you mention a blessing, they remind you of a problem. When others speak well of you, they nod stiffly, never joining in. Envy can't celebrate others because it's too consumed by its own emptiness. And the tragic part is, it often shows up in people close to you. People you thought would be in your corner forever. Sometimes it's a sibling who always saw your strength as competition, or a lifelong friend who silently measured themselves against your every move. Sometimes it's even a child or grandchild who can't quite accept that you've managed to keep your joy, your dignity, your grace, even after everything you've been through, and they resent it. They won't say it outright, but you'll feel it in their tone, in their absence, in their subtle attempts to minimize your significance. And here's what makes it dangerous. When you're older, you're more vulnerable to that kind of behavior. Not because you're weak, but because your heart is tender. You want peace. You want closeness. You're more likely to overlook little jabs, to excuse bad attitudes, to tell yourself, maybe it's just me. But it's not just you. It's real. And it's something you can't afford to ignore. Envy left unchecked can damage your peace without ever raising its voice. It's like a slow leak in a tire, quiet but relentless. These people may not confront you, but they'll undermine you. They'll resist your joy. They'll pull back their support when you need it most. And worst of all, they'll make you question whether you're allowed to shine. You are absolutely allowed to enjoy your life, even now. You're allowed to take joy in your blessings, to be grateful for what God has done, to speak of it freely and fully without tiptoeing around the insecurities of others. You've lived too long, cried too hard, and fought through too much to now dim your light just to soothe someone else's envy. What's tragic is that envy doesn't even have to exist. There's enough grace to go around, enough blessings, enough joy, enough room for all of us to thrive. But an envious heart doesn't see abundance. It only sees competition. And if you're not careful, you'll begin to shrink your life down to make envious people feel better. You'll stop talking about what makes you happy. You'll avoid mentioning what you've accomplished. You'll start editing yourself, not because of humility, but because of fear. That's not how you were meant to live. Let me tell you something plain. Your joy is not arrogance. Your blessings are not bragging. Your peace is not a problem. You don't owe anyone silence to make them feel better about their dissatisfaction. And anyone who truly loves you, truly supports you, will never resent the light in your eyes or the song in your spirit. You see, envy says, why you? But love says, I'm glad it's you. And as you get older, you need to be surrounded by those who rejoice with you, people who clap when you win, people who sit with you not just in sorrow, but in celebration, people who aren't threatened by your strength, but inspired by it. That's the kind of energy you deserve. And if you find yourself constantly walking on eggshells around someone just to keep the peace, ask yourself, is it really peace? Or is it just quiet resentment? You were not called to tiptoe through your own life. You were called to walk boldly, humbly, and gratefully. You can be kind without being small. You can be gracious without being silent. And you can absolutely choose to remove yourself from relationships that run on envy, because the cost is too high. Let those who can't handle your joy sit with their own bitterness. That's their work, not yours. Your only job is to protect the peace you've spent a lifetime earning. And if that means distancing yourself from those who silently compete, who can't rejoice in your freedom, who shrink back when they see you rising, so be it. You've come too far to turn down the volume of your joy. One of the most heartbreaking things to watch, and even more painful to experience, is spending your later years surrounded by people who have no honor for the sacredness of time. They don't value moments. They waste conversations. They talk but say nothing. They're present, but never truly with you. And worse, they treat your time, your stories, your presence, your very existence as something ordinary, as if it will always be there. But I need to tell you this. Not everyone deserves access to your time. Not everyone deserves the gift of your presence. Because that's exactly what it is, a gift. And in your older years, it becomes even more precious, more rare, more fragile. You no longer have days to throw away on meaningless chatter or empty company. You no longer have the energy to sit through hours of complaint or bitterness or shallow distractions. Your soul is craving something deeper now. Connection, not noise. Truth, not performance. Warmth, not routine. There are people in your life who, if you're honest, have stopped showing up for you a long time ago. They come around out of obligation or out of habit, maybe even out of guilt, but not out of love, not out of hunger to connect. You speak and they half listen. You share your heart and they scroll through their phones. You invite them into meaningful conversation and they dodge it with sarcasm or small talk. You feel yourself slowly fading in their presence, not because you're tired, but because they no longer make room for you to be fully alive around them. And here's the part that stings. Many of these people don't even realize what they're doing. They think because they show up once in a while or say the right words on holidays that they've done enough. But the older you get, the more you realize that love is not about appearances. It's about depth, about effort, about presence. And if someone can't be present with you, heart open, ears attentive, spirit engaged, then why are you giving them the most sacred currency you have left? Your time. I want you to hear me loud and clear. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to your life. You don't have to feel guilty for pulling back from people who drain you, who dismiss you, or who only show up when they need something. You've been faithful, you've been kind, you've been available. But now it's time to be wise. Time is a teacher, and by the time you reach these years, you've learned its lessons, how quickly it moves, how permanently it leaves, how precious every moment becomes. And so you have every right to be selective about who gets your time, not out of arrogance, not out of spite, but out of reverence, for what's left of your days, for what remains of your strength, for the treasure that your life still is. You see, there are some people who can sit in your company for hours and never see your soul. And there are others who in 5 minutes can make you feel fully known. Start paying attention to that. Start noticing who leaves you full and who leaves you empty. Who makes time stretch and who makes it feel wasted. Because these moments you're living now, they're not throwaways. They're sacred. They are the final brushstrokes on the canvas of your life, and you deserve to spend them with people who recognize the art. Let me tell you something else. There are people out there who do value your time, who long to sit with you, not to get something, but just to be near your wisdom, your peace, your presence. They're not always the loudest. They're not always the ones closest by blood, but they're watching, they're listening, they're learning, they're grateful. Find those people. Make space for them. Share your time with those who treat it like the treasure it is. And if that means saying no more often, do it. If it means turning off the phone, stepping away from certain conversations, declining invitations that don't serve your spirit, do it. Because you're not just managing a schedule anymore. You're guarding your legacy. You're protecting your soul. You're choosing depth over distraction, purpose over noise. This is your time, and it's holy. Every breath, every step, every moment you still have, it's worth protecting. So don't waste it on those who see you as a convenience. Give it to those who see you as a gift. When we talk about breaking curses, we're not talking about superstition or hocus pocus or strange rituals. We're talking about faith in action. We're talking about partnering with the Holy Spirit to do something bold and prophetic in response to His voice. And so many times, all throughout the Bible, we see God asking His people to do something in the natural that seems completely strange, almost ridiculous, because He's about to do something supernatural. That's what I want you to understand today. It's not about the salt. It's not about the toilet. It's about the obedience. It's about doing what doesn't make sense to our minds because it aligns with what God is doing in the Spirit. Think about Moses. God didn't just say, stand there and pray for water. No, He told him to strike the rock. What sense does that make? A rock doesn't produce water, but it wasn't about the rock. It was about the obedience. When Moses obeyed, water flowed. Then there's Joshua and the walls of Jericho. God didn't tell them to go in with battering rams or climb over the wall with ladders. No, He said march. March in silence, then shout. Again, that doesn't make sense in the natural, but in the Spirit, it was powerful. It was prophetic. And when they obeyed, the walls came down. Naaman is another one, a mighty warrior covered in leprosy. He wanted healing, and the prophet didn't even come to see him. Just sent a messenger saying, go dip in the Jordan River 7 times. Not once, not twice, 7 times. And Naaman was offended at first. He didn't understand it. He thought it was beneath him. But when he humbled himself and obeyed, his skin was restored like that of a young boy. It's not about understanding the instruction. It's about trusting the one who gave it. That's where we are today. That's why I'm saying to you, put salt in your toilet and watch what God does. That act doesn't make sense to your mind. That act doesn't have a scientific explanation. But in the Spirit, it's a prophetic declaration. I am cleansing my home. I am removing waste. I am driving out every unclean thing. I am taking action in faith because I believe something is shifting in the atmosphere. The curse is breaking. The enemy's hold is being flushed out of my house. I don't need to understand how it works. I just need to obey. Do you remember when Jesus healed the blind man? He didn't just say, be healed. He bent down, spit in the dirt, made mud, and wiped it on the man's eyes. Then He said, go wash in the pool of Siloam. Jesus could have healed him right there, but He didn't. Why? Because He was teaching us something. There is power in prophetic action. Power in doing something physical that opens the door for the supernatural. And I want you to know, this act of putting salt in the toilet is not witchcraft, is not superstition. It's a prophetic symbol. Salt has always represented purity, preservation, and covenant. And the toilet, as odd as it may sound, represents the place where things are removed, where waste is carried away. You're saying, every generational curse that tried to stay hidden in my bloodline, you've got to go. Every spirit of addiction that tried to hide in the corners of my household, you've got to go. Every spirit of lust, of confusion, of poverty, of fear, you're getting flushed today. And don't do it casually. Don't do it like it's just a gimmick. Do it with conviction. Do it with prayer. Do it while declaring the word of God. You speak over that act and say, as this salt goes down, every residue of the enemy's assignment is broken in Jesus' name. Because there is power when we combine faith with obedience. Faith isn't just something we feel in our hearts, it's something we act on with our lives. And sometimes God asks us to act in ways that stretch us, challenge us, even make us uncomfortable. But those are the moments where breakthroughs happen. Those are the moments when curses are broken, atmospheres shift, and heaven invades earth. So don't worry if people don't understand. They didn't understand Noah when he built the ark. They didn't understand David when he ran at Goliath with a sling. They didn't understand Jesus when he died on a cross. But obedience brought victory every time. That's the power of a prophetic act. You might not see it with your eyes right away, but something is happening in the spirit realm. You're taking territory. You're reclaiming peace. You're making room for the presence of God to flood your home like never before. So go ahead. Put the salt in your toilet, not as a gimmick, but as a declaration, as a statement of faith. Because when you obey, even in the small, strange, uncomfortable things, God moves in ways you never imagine. Salt. It's simple, ordinary. Something you pass by on the kitchen shelf without thinking twice. But in the hands of God, nothing is ever ordinary. He takes the common and breathes his glory into it. He takes what looks like nothing and makes it holy. That's what salt is in the spirit. Holy. It's not just seasoning. It's not just something that brings flavor. It's a symbol, a message, a covenant reminder that God is still God and he still keeps his promises. The Bible speaks of salt not just as something used in food, but as something sacred. In Leviticus, God commanded that every offering be seasoned with salt. Why? Because salt was a sign of permanence, purity, and divine agreement. It meant that what was being offered wasn't just a ritual. It was a relationship. It was covenant. When you placed salt on your sacrifice, you were saying, I belong to him and he belongs to me. You were saying, this is not just formality. It's a binding connection. And so when I tell you to put salt in your toilet, it's not about the salt. It's about what it represents. It's about stepping into that covenant mindset and declaring, I'm part of something holy. I'm part of something protected. I'm part of something that cannot be defiled by curses or darkness or demonic residue. Salt preserves. In ancient times, before refrigerators or freezers, salt kept food from spoiling. It held back decay. It pushed back rot. And spiritually, that's what salt does in your life. It holds back the rot of the enemy. It preserves what God has spoken over you. It fights off the corruption trying to creep into your home, your mind, your bloodline. That salt is a prophetic picture. Nothing from the pit of hell can contaminate what God has declared clean in my life. It's no accident that Jesus called us the salt of the earth. Salt doesn't just sit there. It influences everything it touches. And that's what God is saying to you. Your obedience, your declaration, your bold prophetic action is going to influence the very atmosphere of your home. It may feel small, it may feel strange, but heaven moves in response to faith. When you drop that salt, you're not seasoning a meal, you're seasoning the environment. You're declaring that your house is under covenant. Your bedroom is under covenant. Your finances, your relationships, your thoughts, they are preserved in the name of Jesus. Now think of the toilet. Yes, I said it. The toilet. Let's stop pretending like God can only move in beautiful sanctuaries or during soft worship songs. No. He's the God of every room, every place, every situation. Even the places we think are dirty. Even the places we ignore. Even the places we don't talk about. He is not afraid of our mess. He's not offended by what we flush away. In fact, he wants to get right in the middle of it and declare, even here I reign. So when you take that salt and you pour it into the toilet, don't do it like you're performing a ritual. Do it like you're marking territory. Say with your spirit, this home is preserved. This covenant is protected. No spirit of darkness can stay hidden here. No curse can stay embedded in the pipes. No generational cycle can remain unchallenged. As I pour this salt, I remind hell that I belong to God. I remind the atmosphere that I am covered. I remind every demon that thought it had a right to stay. It has been evicted. Salt doesn't just preserve, it purifies. It cleanses, it burns bacteria, it kills parasites. And in the spirit, that's exactly what we need. We need that fire of God's purity to sweep through every room, every decision, every conversation. We need the salt of the covenant to purify the atmosphere in our homes, get rid of bitterness, of resentment, of confusion, of strife. We need it to burn away every hidden seed of fear, every silent agreement with the enemy, every whisper that says, "You're still cursed." No, you are not. You are in covenant. And that salt is your reminder. We're not asking God to do something new. He's already done it. Jesus said, "It is finished." The power of the curse was broken at the cross. What we're doing now is enforcing that truth. We're saying, "I agree with heaven." We're not hoping for breakthrough. We're taking hold of what's already ours. And sometimes that means acting boldly, physically, prophetically. So don't just stand back and wait. Get the salt, speak the word, pour it with purpose, pour it with power. Pour it while you declare everything that's been trying to decay my peace, my marriage, my purpose. It stops now. This is not superstition. This is not magic. This is covenant. This is obedience. This is prophetic resistance against every force of darkness that thought you'd stay quiet. You're not just putting salt in the toilet. You're drawing a line in the spirit. Obedience. That's where it begins. Not in the shouting, not in the oil, not in the loud declarations, but in the quiet, simple act of saying, "Yes, Lord." That's where curses begin to break. Not always with lightning and thunder, but with a decision, a step. A moment where you stop arguing with God, stop trying to understand everything, and simply do what He says. That's where the supernatural begins to open. You can pray for years, you can fast, you can cry out, but if obedience isn't there, you're holding the key in your hand and refusing to unlock the door. God responds to faith, yes, but faith is not passive. Faith obeys. Faith moves. Faith says, "This doesn't make sense to me. But I'm not leaning on my understanding. I'm leaning on His voice." I know what some of you are thinking. What does putting salt in the toilet have to do with breaking a curse? And I get it. It sounds foolish. It sounds like nonsense. But haven't we seen this before? Haven't we seen God ask people to do things that make no sense because He was testing their obedience, not their logic? Think of Abraham. God told him to take his son, the son of promise, the one he waited for, and offer him as a sacrifice. Can you imagine the turmoil in his heart? But he obeyed. He didn't wait to understand. He didn't delay. He rose early. And as he lifted the knife, God stepped in. God said, "Now I know. Now I know that you fear me. Now I know that you trust me. Now I know you will obey." And the blessing that followed Abraham's obedience echoes through generations. Obedience isn't about understanding. It's about trust. It's about surrender. And when you're dealing with curses, especially those hidden, generational, subtle ones that seem to stick to your bloodline like shadows, obedience is the only thing that cuts through. Not cleverness, not emotion, not trying harder. Obedience. And sometimes God will test your willingness to obey through something strange, something uncomfortable, something that exposes your pride. Because pride is a gate that keeps curses locked in, but obedience breaks that gate. It humbles you, it puts you in a posture of trust, and it invites the power of God to rush in like a flood. I know someone is thinking, is it really necessary to do something like this? Can't I just pray? Of course, you can pray. But if God is nudging you to act, if the Spirit is whispering, "Do this," then prayer without obedience becomes disobedience cloaked in religion. And that's not where the power is. The power is in saying yes. Do you remember Saul? God gave him a specific instruction: destroy everything. Don't spare anything. But Saul thought he could do it his own way. He spared what looked valuable. He justified it. He covered it in religious language. And Samuel came to him and said, "To obey is better than sacrifice." Saul thought partial obedience would be enough. But partial obedience is still disobedience, and it cost him everything. When you obey God, even in something as simple and symbolic as putting salt in your toilet, You are sending a signal to heaven. I trust you more than I trust my logic. I trust your wisdom more than my reasoning. And I want freedom more than I want comfort. Because let me tell you something, there is no curse strong enough to survive a life laid down in obedience. Some of the curses we deal with didn't start with us. They started with people who disobeyed God before we were even born. Some of us are carrying the residue of decisions we didn't even make. But we don't have to stay bound by what our ancestors ignored. We have a choice. We have authority. We have an opportunity to obey where they disobeyed and see the curse break at our feet. So when you go to do this act, this simple thing, this salt in the toilet moment, don't let pride talk you out of it. Don't let reasoning talk you down. Don't let embarrassment convince you that it's beneath you. What if Naaman had refused to dip in the river because it felt silly? What if Joshua had said, marching around a wall won't work? What if Peter had said, casting my net again after fishing all night is a waste of time? But they obeyed. And something happened, something shifted. This isn't about the salt. It's not about the toilet. It's about saying to God, I'm willing, I'm available, I'll do whatever you ask, no matter how small, no matter how strange, because I want to be free. And if He chose this act, this moment, this odd little instruction as the place where your breakthrough begins, don't miss it. Don't hesitate. Don't delay. Your freedom might just be on the other side of your obedience. There are some things God wants to deal with that live in the hidden places, not the public areas where we show our best, not the parts of our lives we let people see, but the quiet corners, the tucked away places, the areas we don't talk about. And that's what makes this moment so powerful, because God is not afraid of going there. In fact, He specializes in it. He knows how to step into the secret, messy, unspoken places and say, this too belongs to me. We clean what's visible, we fix what's seen, but some things we just close the door on and hope they stay out of sight. Just like that toilet, tucked in the back of the house, behind a door, often avoided in conversations. But it's necessary, and it's where things go when they're no longer needed. Waste, residue, filth, flushed away. And it's precisely that place God wants to use as a prophetic symbol to remind us He's not just interested in the outer appearance. He wants to cleanse the whole house, the whole soul, every part of you. David prayed something so honest, so raw, so necessary. He said, create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. He didn't ask for a better reputation. He didn't ask for a bigger platform. He asked to be clean. Because when the hidden places are clean, everything changes. When the soul is clean, when the secret parts are touched by heaven, you begin to walk in a freedom that can't be faked. And isn't it just like the enemy to hide in the places we ignore? He's a squatter. He finds access in pain that hasn't been healed. He hides in bitterness that was never addressed. He hides in memories we stuffed down and said, I'm over it, even though it still stings. That's where curses fester. In the places we don't clean, the spiritual corners we pretend don't exist. But God doesn't want you to pretend. He wants you free. So this act, this strange, symbolic moment of putting salt in your toilet, it's not about impressing God. It's about inviting Him. It's about saying, God, I'm giving you permission to clean the places I don't know how to clean myself. And don't think for a moment that He'll turn away from you. He won't say, that's too dirty. He won't say, you should have fixed that by now. He's not like people. He steps in, rolls up his sleeves and gets to work. He goes straight into the place where the enemy has been whispering, hiding, nesting, and He clears it out. I need you to hear this in your spirit. There are some things that will never shift until you let God into the hidden rooms. You can shout and you can declare and you can go to every conference, but if you won't open the door to the place where the trauma lives, the cycle continues. That's why deliverance is personal. That's why God uses things that feel strange, because they bypass our logic and speak directly to the spirit. It's not about the action. It's about what it represents. And when you pour that salt into the toilet, you are saying, this is the end of it. This is where it goes. No more hiding, no more tolerating, no more pretending. We treat the bathroom like the least holy place in the house. But isn't it the most honest one? The place where everything unnecessary is removed. The place where what no longer serves the body is flushed away. And spiritually, that's what God is saying. Let me flush what's been poisoning your peace. Let me flush what's been sitting in your soul, polluting your joy, infecting your identity. He wants to go there, and he wants you to let him. Don't be afraid to confront what's been lingering, that bitterness that always surfaces during the holidays, that heaviness that hits you when you're alone, that anger that bubbles up and surprises you, those thoughts that you swore you were done with. Those are the things the enemy uses to keep curses active. Not because God hasn't delivered you, but because you haven't surrendered the hidden place where the residue still lives. And that's what this act is about. That's what this moment represents. It's not about being theatrical. It's about being real, raw, desperate. Saying, God, I don't want to just look free. I want to be free. I want my house clean. I want my heart clean. I want every corner of my life under your rule. And if it takes pouring salt in a toilet and praying with tears in my eyes, then so be it. Because I refuse to let pride or shame keep me from a cleansing that you are offering so freely. This is how strongholds break. This is how chains fall. When you stop hiding and you start inviting the Holy Spirit into the places no one else sees, and when you do, something begins to shift. The water moves, the residue lifts, and you feel it. You feel the weight leaving, the clarity coming, the purity rising again. Because when God cleanses the hidden places, the curse loses its grip. God honors bold faith, not comfortable faith, not polite faith. Bold, radical, unapologetic faith. The kind of faith that makes you look a little foolish. The kind of faith that says, I may not have all the answers, but I know the one who does. Bold faith doesn't wait for the room to agree. Bold faith doesn't check the weather forecast before stepping out of the boat. Bold faith says, if Jesus is out there, then I'm coming, even if I have to walk on water to get to him. Some of you are waiting for your breakthrough to feel comfortable. You're waiting for the curse to lift in a way that makes sense. But bold faith doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It moves when God speaks. Even if that means doing something that doesn't look normal. Even if that means standing in your bathroom with a box of salt and tears streaming down your face, declaring enough is enough. This curse ends here. What does bold faith look like? It looks like Noah building an ark when it had never rained. It looks like the woman with the issue of blood, pushing through the crowd, crawling, reaching just to touch the hem of his garment. It looks like the centurion saying, you don't even need to come to my house. Just speak the word. And Jesus stopped. He stopped every time bold faith showed up. He paused, he turned, he responded, because heaven is attracted to bold faith. Faith that plays it safe rarely sees the supernatural. But faith that risks everything, that steps out into unfamiliar territory, that's where miracles live. That's where curses break. That's where freedom starts. And I believe with everything in me that when you act boldly, even in something as unusual as pouring salt into a toilet, God takes notice. He sees the heart behind it. He sees the desperation in your obedience. And he moves. You're not being dramatic. You're being determined. You're not being silly. You're being spiritual. This is how breakthroughs happen. Not always on Sunday mornings, not always in a church building. Sometimes it's in your house at midnight when nobody else is watching. Sometimes it's in the silence when you finally say, God, I'm ready to do whatever you tell me, even if it looks crazy to everyone else. I know it's not conventional. I know it's not something they taught in Bible class. But there's something about faith that steps beyond tradition and leans fully on trust. God's not looking for polished performances. He's looking for hearts that say, I believe you can do anything. I believe you'll use anything. I believe you'll work through salt and toilets and cracked voices and broken people. That's the kind of faith he honors. And can I tell you something? The enemy banks on your silence. He banks on your hesitation. He hopes you'll feel too embarrassed, too confused, too worried about what people will think. Because he knows the moment you act, really act, he loses ground. He knows the moment you stop praying timid prayers and start moving in bold faith, something shifts in the atmosphere. When you move in obedience and boldness, you're not just doing an act, you're declaring war. You're drawing a line. You're announcing to every demon that thought it could stay hidden, you don't belong here anymore. This kind of faith doesn't need applause. It doesn't need an audience. It just needs agreement with heaven. Bold faith isn't about volume. It's about surrender. It's about trusting God enough to obey without needing all the answers. It's about saying, even if it's uncomfortable, even if I feel awkward, I won't let pride keep me bound. I won't let the opinions of others keep this curse alive one more day. There's a kind of power that only shows up when you risk your dignity. Ask Bartimaeus, blind, sitting by the road. Everyone told him to be quiet, to stay in his place. But he cried louder, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And Jesus stopped. Bold faith will always make Jesus stop. Bold faith will always pull heaven into your situation. So yes, grab that salt. Go into the very place the enemy thought he could hide in your home. Speak out loud what you've been too afraid to say. Declare that this act isn't superstition. It's faith. Bold faith. And it's going to break things in the spirit realm that have been lingering for far too long, because the ones who see the mountains move are always the ones who weren't afraid to speak to them. There comes a point where you stop asking for freedom and start declaring it. A moment when your voice becomes a weapon, when your words stop sounding like desperation and start sounding like authority. And that's where some of you are right now, not begging God to do what he's already done, but stepping into it, opening your mouth, using your voice, saying, I declare in the name of Jesus, this curse is broken. Because there's power when you speak it. There's power when you agree with heaven and stand on the word. You can't stay silent. Not now. Not after everything God has shown you. Not after everything he's brought you through. This isn't the time to whisper your prayers and hope for the best. This is the time to speak boldly. This is the time to declare with faith, I'm not cursed. I'm covered. I'm not bound. I'm free. The enemy doesn't mind if you think it quietly, but he trembles when you say it out loud. He trembles when you speak with confidence, knowing who you are and whose you are. There is something powerful about declaring a thing. Scripture says, you shall decree a thing and it will be established. That means your words, when aligned with God's will, don't just float into the air. They go to war. They build. They shift things. They establish new territory. And some of you have been silent for too long. You've tolerated the enemy whispering lies in your house, in your head, in your bloodline. But the moment you open your mouth and speak what God has already said over you, the atmosphere changes. So when you do this, when you pour the salt, when you pray over your home, when you take this prophetic step, don't do it silently. Don't just think your prayers. Say them. Speak over your children. Speak over your marriage. Speak over your mind. Speak over your finances. Stand in that bathroom and speak like you know heaven is backing you. Declare every hidden curse, every generational stronghold, every demonic residue. It's finished. It's flushed. It's gone. You don't need to wait for another sign. You don't need another confirmation. God has already given you the authority. He said you're seated with Christ in heavenly places. He said all power in heaven and earth belongs to him, and you are his. That means when you speak under his authority, hell has no choice but to listen. You're not speaking as a victim, you're speaking as a victor. I want you to imagine it. Just for a moment. Imagine all the spiritual weight, all the years of torment, all the old cycles, being pulled down that drain with the salt. Imagine them losing their grip. Imagine the atmosphere clearing. Imagine peace rushing into your home like a flood. That's what happens when faith and declaration come together. It's not about feelings, it's about truth. And truth, when spoken in faith, activate something in the spirit realm that nothing else can touch. This is more than just a one-time act. This is the beginning of a new pattern, a new way of living. You don't just declare once, you keep declaring. Every day, every moment the enemy tries to whisper again, you say, no, not here. That door is closed. You keep watch over your house like a spiritual gatekeeper. You keep speaking life. You keep rejecting lies. You keep walking in the freedom that Christ already paid for. Don't underestimate the power of your words. God created the entire universe with a word. Jesus cast out demons with a word, and he said the same spirit that raised him from the dead lives in you. That means your voice, when aligned with the spirit, is a threat to every curse that ever tried to cling to your family. That means your declaration today isn't just noise, it's warfare. And here's the truth, the enemy doesn't give up territory willingly. He's stubborn, he's sneaky, he tries to come back in through familiar doors. But when you've declared a thing, when you've established your house as a place of covenant, a place of purity, a place of divine authority, you've made it clear that darkness can't stay. And even when you feel resistance, you stand your ground. You say it again, you speak it again, you declare the word until your atmosphere agrees with heaven. Don't just pour the salt and walk away. Pour the salt and speak. Pour the salt and worship. Pour the salt and prophesy over your own life. You say, I am blessed. I am healed. I am whole. I am clean. My children are covered. My mind is protected. My home is a sanctuary. The curse has no place here. Because what you speak has power. What you declare sets things in motion. And what you believe enough to say, God is faithful to honor. So speak it now, with boldness, because silence won't save you, but your declaration will.